Hello everyone and welcome to the fourth of our Moxtober daily recap videos. Today's theme is going to be Dream. And if you don't know what Moxtober is, it's an annual month-long event where each day in the month of October has a different prompt associated with it, and people make different Magic the Gathering related creative pursuits or endeavors based around that prompt. Most people make custom Magic cards, and due to ease of showcase, that's what we're going to be talking about today. But people also make anything from fan fiction to theme decks to any sort of to art to any sort of creative pursuit around Magic the Gathering. Today, joining me, I have Ancestral of MTG.design and Bradley Rose from the Beacon of Creation community. So, thank you guys for joining me. And as always, you can find all of the art credit for the art that's being used in the thumbnail here, designer credit for each card we feature, and instructions on how you can submit your own cards to potentially be featured. All of that is in the description. But yeah, I think with that, we can get into our first cards. So, I guess I can start us off, and I'm going to be going to the MSC file, and I want to showcase Lucidity, a card designed by Provocative. And it's a pretty simple card. It's just, as long as it's not your turn, you may cast spells without paying their mana cost. And I really like this because I think that it's one of those things where I think, what do you call it? Omniscience is a really cool card in certain contexts, but also sometimes it can just be like, well, I draw this, I untap, or like I play this, and then I just dump my entire hand. Here, you have to have a specific build around. You can also probably run a bunch of counter spells and your opponent never gets to play the game again. But then you also have to pass the turn, which gives an opponent an opportunity to respond with instant speed removal. So there's like a little more play there. But yeah, I really like this as an Omniscience side grade because I think that by changing one little thing, it completely changes the dynamic of how the card builds and plays. So
I like the story that it's telling. It's recontextualizing what it means to be the active player. You're awake, and then perhaps during other players' turns, you went to bed. You're done. But during that time, of course, that's when your dreams come alive. I do also appreciate the little extra hoop here. Omniscience to me is like boring. It's sort of like, oh, okay, Superman showed up. Who's gonna win? I don't know. This one, it's like, okay, try a little harder, just a little bit. You can even add more conditions, but it's very nice delineation.
I want to see this in a commander deck that like focuses around flash. I think that's where this would shine, since if it's not your turn, you're probably not gonna be able to, cast any creatures. But if you had a commander like Teferi, Mage of Zalfir, where creature cards your own have flash, then this could be really fun.
mm,
I suppose also just a flat like a Spells Matter deck. This could be a lot of fun in as well.
yeah, like I've played with similar cards in custom card formats, where specifically the thing is there are a few cards where if you meet a certain condition, you can play the first spell that you play each turn without paying its mana cost. The
Mm-hmm.
interesting thing about those is your opponent gets a full turn cycle to deal with them because if you play them, then you've already played your first spell for turn. So you don't get to cheat out something the turn that you play those. So, but lots of those decks run, as a result, run like stuff with flash and instants so that they can get quote unquote instant value uh, out of it because it's not on each of your turns, it's on each turn. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I think that's what also drew me to this card because I was like, yeah, this is just that play pattern, except intentionally codified this way, and not just a quirk of how each turn works.
I think I would just like have all kinds of draw spells in my deck. Instant instant speed draw spells. Does uh spells with X in them, do you still have to pay additional mana, or you can just make X whatever you want?
X is 0 as far as I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, who wants to take the next card?
Nominate myself.
Ooh, a twist.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. For those following the lore so far in this series. Okay, so MTG.design land has Curse of the Dreamcatcher. This is a reward for whenever opponents discard cards. So you think of the classic Megrim is a way to go and get rewarded for causing your opponent to discard cards. This is a really cool way to pair the other black ability, which is stealing cards that you can then cast. It's a very natural segue. You discard the card. What's the reward? Oh, it's that card itself. Let me just take that right there. Thank you. Put a dream counter on it, and it's stuck in Dreamland. I think it's a very elegant, cohesive design.
Yeah, it's just, again, this is a card that I feel like I blink at it and I'm like, oh, this hasn't already been printed. It's just that natural of a fit or natural of a progression of these type of effect combinations. So yeah, and I love the art is also really cool. It's just this giant dream catcher. I'm just imagining like an explorer just happening upon this, and then every time they go to sleep, they just see that image in their mind, and they just like because discarding cards is like flavored as madness, right? So it just gets the dream catcher slowly sapping away at them while they're sleeping. But yeah,
I think the trick here would be to have spells where you can choose what card that they discard. Otherwise, they're just going to try to discard their worst card, which then you'd end up with, they discard a swamp, and then you're like, great, I guess I have a swamp. That's value.
I mean, to be fair, it is still. I guess you can't cast lands, but
That's true. So,
but
that would be a.
but if they're like a relatively mana hungry deck, or like if they want to be hitting their land drops, discarding lands may not be an option for them. It also could be like if you have like repeated discard effects, like or like even like a bunch of relentless rats, at a certain point they don't like get many choices,
Of
and
course, yeah.
and I think that like yeah, just going like +2 instead of +1 in terms of card advantage every time you make them discard a card is, I think, pretty worth. Even if it's like a dinky card advantage is card advantage. Okay, in that case, Ancestral. What's your first card for the day?
Sure thing. So we will go to the website here, mtg.design, and is a card called Dream Anew, which is a sorcery for 3 white, destroy all creatures, and it has adamant. If at least 3 green mana was spent to cast a spell, then you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. So I like this design. I think adamant was really kind of cool. So we saw that in Throne of Eldraine, where it rewarded you for it. Well, I think in the set it was mostly monocolored, right? Like it was just kind of like, hey, if you put more of the same color, then you'll get an extra benefit, extra +1/+1 counters, or some other better effect. Here it's kind of interesting where it's asking if you would like to play an allied color, then you get this extra effect. In this case, you get to put a creature down for free. Obviously, it could be quite abusable, but I think that for a wrath effect and basically being green, white, I think that's totally reasonable.
This was also on my list, and I have a lot to say about this. Like, I think that it's really interesting because green is not typically a color that you see in control, and you usually see rats in like controlling shells. So this really makes you like from the get go. It's like, oh, okay, so what decks does this go in? and like maybe you could put this in like ramp as like a just a big finisher. Um, but yeah, I like that like tension there. Um, what I'm not as sold on is I think that this mitigates one of the big things, or like one of the big drawbacks of wipes is supposed to be, is that um, your opponent is supposed to be able to untap and start generating value first. So I think the ability to just wipe everything and then also windmill slam something feels a bit much to me, even for the cost. I think that it's definitely a really steep cost mana wise, but I think that if you're in a two color deck, you can hit that reasonably often, especially with duels or dorks or something, other types of fixing. So I think I would like this a little more at for white white, but yeah, overall I think the concept is fantastic, and I think that there's a lot of tension in such a simple design. So also, wait, quick shout out. Shout out to ThaetaMtg for designing this one, and
Mhm.
Razor for designing the previous card. And all the card credits are in for the MTG.design cards are in the bottom right of the card.
And what a wonderful concept that's going on here. That's strongly portrayed by the art here. It reminds me of how in life there's an ideal world, but then you look at the actual world and it's a mess. And that's like in Magic. You're like, here's my ideal board state when I'm building my deck. And then when I look at the battlefield in the actual games, what a mess. I
Mhm.
wish I could be away from all of this. And that's very wonderful. It makes me feel nice when I look at this. Warm, not nice.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Okay, coming around back to me, I'm going to stick to MTG.design, and we're going to go for Dream Sight as the next card. This one is incredibly straightforward. It's Future Sight, or it's Dream Halls stapled to a Future Sight, and I kind of love it. It probably shouldn't cost the same as normal Future Sight, um, but I just love the overall concept of, again, it's like what we were saying before, natural progressions of stapling effects that two effects that a color can naturally get. Um, though also I could definitely see this, like I actually I kind of want to ask for permission to print this in a cube now, because I think at two blue 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 it's kind of a perfect cube build around slash design. But yeah, I'm not sure there's much specifically to say about this. It's just really hype. So thanks to Tzarl for making this one.
Uh, it it's very clever with how using the staples, but also the names of post stapling uh tell something different. Future sight means you know you got some time element involved, but changing it to dream is like now you're in this other parallel world to the real world, and that's just like very simple thing. And it's like, why would you change it to dream? Oh, it's dream halls. Okay, so a little chef kiss.
But yeah, okay. In that case, Bradley, what's your next card?
Okay, here's another blue card in Magic set editor. This one is called Lucid Dreaming. Oh shoot, is this one might have been designed by someone that I didn't write the name of.
Okay, we'll quickly look it up then. Is it Lucid Daydream or Lucid Daydreamer?
Lucid Dreaming, I think. My notes are right. I'm going through real quick through all the designed by. Oh, a
Designed by
little.
ThePunisher.
There it is. Yes. Thank you. Um, a little reminder for everyone who's submitting. Put the names in. Helps make this easier. But yeah, lucid dreaming. So this gets into the element of dreaming where uh, you're able to, against your control, uh, exit your dream state, like in real life. Sometimes you want to get back to your dreams because it's wonderful there, but you can't control that. And that's conveyed with the combat damage. You try your best to stay in the dream, and the lucid part is a very elegant way of adding the descriptor. It's a real term, but it explains why you're able to do cool stuff while you're dreaming.
Yeah, I think this is a cool card. It's just a really simple, like, hey, I get a bunch of these buffs, but I have to make sure that I, um, like, pillow fort myself up to keep this dream state alive. So,
Hello for it. It's very clever.
oh my god, yeah, it works because pillow. Yeah, I didn't even put that together.
Amazing.
So it breaks down when creatures deal damage to you, or when combat damage is dealt to other creatures you control.
Whenever you're dealt combat damage.
Okay, so whenever a creature hits you. Okay, yeah. It sort of reminds me of the black enchantment that we had from a couple sets ago, where like you draw 3 cards and then you lose a life whenever you cast a spell. And
Yes.
gosh, I'm drawing a blank on that card, but I do like the trade off here. Although I think it's really efficient. I don't know if it would actually be an uncommon if we saw this printed today, but it's
Yeah.
basically a Howling Mine plus
Need some play design
plus
stuff
a
on it.
yeah. So
Yeah, or
it's
this would be like,
really good.
or this would be like a multiplayer card where like it turns you into arch enemy and then you have
Mm-hmm.
like a lot more uh enemies to
Yeah.
deal with or fend off. You can't just go turn 2 Wall of Omens, turn 3 this and then just kind of cruise.
I kind of want to like have creatures that goad, so I could convince the other player. You know, it may obviously if you put this down in a multiplayer game of Magic, people are gonna instantly target you. So you'd have to find other ways to entice people. No, actually, you want to attack the other guy.
For sure.
Were you thinking of Treacherous Blessing for a black version?
Treacherous Blessing, yeah. So this is kind of like Blue's Treacherous Blessing, Blue's Lucid Dreaming.
They both end in ing. It's basically a cycle.
Yeah. the the volatile enchantment draw cards ing cycle.
Or 3 mana, right?
Yeah, it's
For
even
3 mana,
yeah. two generic and one of the color.
And whenever you it has to have a trigger whenever you cast a spell as well.
Ah, okay.
Or
So this is
forecasting spells, maybe.
oh yeah, okay. So it still makes it. Okay, Ancestral. What's your next card?
Sure thing. Let's talk about Eltya Dream Thief. This is on MTG.design. So Eltya is a 3/2 fairy rogue for 2 blue-black. If it isn't day or night, it becomes day. When it enters the battlefield, when day becomes night, exile a top card of each opponent's library. When night becomes day, choose a card exiled with Eltya, and you may cast it without paying its mana cost. With the newest set with Midnight Hunt, we have the day-night cycle, and there's lots of design space there. I didn't think I even realized how much design space there was until, I actually started playing with the cards at pre-release, but there's a lot of cards we're seeing. Red has some of that going on in the set. When day turns to night, night turns to day, things happen. I think maybe all the colors do it. So really interesting to see a commander that does that, and blue-black is kind of the thieving, stealing color pair. So I think this is really interesting. Every time it goes to night, you sort of get one more, and then when it goes to day, you can cast that card. And it looks like you don't have to cast it, so you could kind of bank it for later, if you will.
Yeah, you've got like 5 creatures on your board, and you exile a Wrath of God, and they have 0, and you're like, okay, I'll wait on this one. Very cool that like it feels like Eltya is diving into the dream and then like swimming back out with stuff to use in the real world when night becomes day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it sort of has this flavor of taking something from the dream world, right, and then being able to bring it into the real world.
Yeah, confession time. I generally don't like the day becomes night, night becomes day mechanic. It felt when I first saw it, it felt really wordy, and like whenever I see it, like my head starts spinning when I'm like, oh, well, what triggers what, blah 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 blah. This is maybe the first implementation I've seen where I'm like, this is really clean. Um, they flow into each other in a way that makes sense, um, and the triggers kind of also relate to the quote unquote flip conditions of day and night by caring about spells. So, yeah, I'm just a like it takes. I was pretty anti day night, and this made me reconsider. So that's definitely an achievement. So, thank you, Elis. Very cool. And I guess next up, I'll go with my next card is Only a Dream from MTG.design. Uh, it's 4 blue and a white for an instant. Return each creature that entered the battlefield this turn to its owner's hand. Then return each creature that died this turn to the battlefield under their owner's control. Exile Only a Dream. Again, great use of like mechanics as flavor, and I think also a good show of restraint, in the sense of I saw like a few designs like this today, or a few designs like conceptualized as Only a Dream, but I think lots of them they're like also reset life totals. You put all spells back into your hand. Um, all of this other stuff, which while it contributes to the feeling of a full reset, gets really wordy, gets really hard to track. This keeps it simple, keeps it evocative, keeps it functional. And so I'm a big fan of this card. So shout out to GreyLotus.
This was also one I had written down. I agree with your points, Caillou. Um, Especially a great point about not having to perfectly emulate everything that did happen in a turn. Got got reset. You just need enough to tell the story.
This reminds me of Living Death, where it sort of swaps things between the battlefield and the graveyard. In this case, it's swapping stuff between the battlefield and your hand. So, yeah, I think it works. I mean, it's definitely in the correct color pie pair. And it being an instant, really powerful. So if someone is about to, destroy stuff on the board, I guess you can respond.
You can also do
Yeah.
like funky stuff where you perma kill a bunch of tokens with this,
Mm-hmm.
um, or just like you make a risky attack, um, or like you make your opponent full out attacks you, knowing that you're gonna have to sack most of your board to stop from dying, and then you cast this, and it's like, oh, I got all of my blockers back, um, and they're now tapped out because they swung
Yeah, I
out at
guess
me, and that now I
right.
can
It's
swing back for lethal.
more of a response to after like a Wrath of God effect. Sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Bradley, what's your next card?
Okay, let's go over to Magic Set Editor. Careless Dream is the name of the card. Let's see. Yes. Okay. So pacifism costs 1 and a white and just does the attack or block restriction. However, this Careless Dreams gives you the extra benefit of locking down an opponent's activated abilities. So what do you get in exchange? What does opponent get for that such sweet down cost or extra benefit on your end? Well, they get to gain a life. Now, that is a fantastic balancing of the card because when you're dreaming, you're sleeping, and when you're sleeping, you're resting and you're recovering from your wariness, and that explains the life that you're gaining. And also, the giving the downside of activated abilities can't be activated all makes sense just on the level of, well, sleeping people probably can't just be like, oh look, your Llanowar elves, it's sleeping, but I guess it's providing green mana somehow. It's got idle druid hands or something. Yeah, so great pair of effects that just adding to pacifism turns this into a nice new flavor.
Yeah, and we usually see this type of flavor for removal spells in blue. So a way that just neatly translated into white. Also, the art as something that's like super tranquil. I think also you have like these little pets sitting around, makes it feel like a lot more like white in nature, where it's just kind of it's like a very peaceful thing, and like you have the mechanics as flavor with the life gain. So yeah, and once again, very glad to have some commons in here. We love commons for Moxtober Cube. So shout out to Rodzos for designing this. Rodzos.
I think established players would probably say that the pacifism auras at 2 mana are a little aggressive, but pacifism effects on 3 mana is maybe just below curve. Like it's you kind of hate to spend 3, but you will, and so this sort of gives you. This is actually like a great common where it's 2 mana with just a little bit of a drawback.
Yeah, it can
That's a
have a
great
drawback.
point.
It has a treat.
Yeah.
Or however you want to spin that. I mean, you could absolutely put it on your own creature if you had like the some sort of a gain life effect with a creature that isn't going to attack or block it. There's some flexibility, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. That's actually a cool synergy. I should look out for that when I'm building the cube.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, okay. Ancestral, what's your next card?
Okay, so this is in both, so either the file or the site. It is Daydream, and Daydream. There might be a couple of them. So this is a horse. This is a 3 and a white. It is a horse. It has lifelink, and Daydream's power and toughness are each equal to the number of planes you control. If you're a newer player, you might not understand the significance on this, but if you were a little bit more of an established player, you'll recognize this is a color shifted card. Kind of. It's basically a shifted card from an old standby called Nightmare. So Nightmare was from Alpha, and Nightmare was a black card, and it had flying, but basically power and toughness were equal to the number of swamps. I think that was a 6 mana card. So this is a 4 mana card and has lifelink.
Yeah, that was a 6 mana card.
Yeah, which back in the day, everyone was like, "Oh, it's still so powerful," and admittedly, flying, you got some evasion there. But I just think this is fantastic. A great kind of shifted into white. This is kind of like white's Lightmare, right? Daydream.
Yeah, this is just such a good design. Like, it's a riff on an iconic card that fits with the prompt and just feels super white. And I love the flavor text. The thunder of its hooves inspires hope in all in its wake. So, yeah. Also, I will still defend that Nightmare is a limited nightmare, because that thing gets really big really fast. So definitely put that at rare if you're reprinting it, I will say. But yeah, thanks to
I,
SonOfBolas for this card.
yeah. Yeah, I was excited to see. I think a lot of people took the the most common definition, I would say, of nightmare, the most literal one, and this was sort of the nightmare, right? The night horse. So I'm happy that someone went with the horse idea here.
Mm-hmm. And like, I know that we're getting a lot of Nightmare horses as well for tomorrow, so I think that this is kind of a preview of what we're going to be seeing tomorrow.
Right, exactly. This is the dream part of the nightmare. It's the dream dare. It's dream mare.
But yeah, okay, with that, I'm going to go back around to my card. This is in mtg.design, and it's Cathartic Dream. We're continuing the theme of simple, fun commons. It's essentially a bounce spell that you can pay 2 as a kicker, and then you draw an additional card during your next draw step. Usually, this is 1 blue and then 1 blue to kick it. But here, since you don't get the card advantage immediately, there's a little bit of leeway there. Um, and I think that makes it a lot more enticing of a card as well, because these are usually played in tempo decks where you want your cards to be as cheap or as playable early on the curve as possible, so that you can just kind of uh, essentially like do a bunch of things on opponents' end steps or opponents' turns if you need to be, to stifle their plays. Just really mana efficient. So yeah, I'm a big fan of this card, and it will absolutely be seeing some placement in Moxtober Cube. So thanks, MasterGolos, for this design.
I like the um, it takes time to sleep and dream up things.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just spend 5 seconds sleeping and you get a whole dream in. You gotta take time. So uh, mechanically you mentioned Caillou, you change the 1 and a blue to a 2. Um, and then yeah, the reward makes sense. Drawing a card represents getting like immediate ideas in your hand is what you're thinking of. And when you wake up from the dream, that's when you're like, oh my gosh, I got to write this down or otherwise enact it.
But yeah, okay then. Bradley, what's your next card?
All right, let's stick with the MTG design area, and we're going to summon the Dream Team. Dun 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 dun. Okay, hopefully you don't get DMCA. Sorry. So this is okay. There's only been one card in all of Magic to mention the word characteristics, and here is another one. Not to be taken lightly, so it is an uncommon, a little dangerous, but that's okay. I like the execution of the flavor. Like dream, you're like, all right, where do we go? A lot of people went with the sleep, dream state, but then there's dream team is like a term that's common, and it's something that I caught me off guard. And I think all of the creatures that you could make are well balanced with each other for the options that you do get to have. Because fencing ace is 1 and a white normally, but you bump it up the 1 generic to a white, you then still have fencing ace as an option with other stuff. Same thing with the 1/3 cleric. That's in a core set. I forget if there's probably a 2/1 creature with vigilance at 1 and a white somewhere maybe, and then so making it double white for all of this benefit with Entwine. I really like having that flexibility. And then late game is also good. That could be something that a weakness of White Weenie. It kind of putters out at the end.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
kind of...
maybe.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say maybe this would work well with Coven, like Coven in Midnight Hunt. I guess you would only choose between 1 and 2, but The idea being here that you might decide to take a dog over a soldier if you needed that power 2 creature on your board. I think I can see myself really getting drawn to the soldier with double strike, so I could just put tons of equipment on it. But I could also see the value with, I guess, having an early blocker with the 1/3 cleric. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's just kind of a solid card all around. And I agree, I love unique interpretations of the prompt. So Dream Team is a really cool way to go with that. So yeah, thanks to Gluestick248 for making this design. And yeah, like there's so many like if for equipment arc for if you like I think this is a great uncommon as well because it can straddle so many archetypes despite being double white. Because for like an equipments or Voltron archetype, getting a quick double striker is really good. For like the aforementioned, maybe you have a whenever you gain life archetype, the cleric is great for that. And the dog, unlike the others, has 2 power, so it's kind of just like the flex, just 2 power is good option. But yeah, Ancestral, what's your next card?
This one I don't actually no, I do know who designed it. Looks like it's Larcent. This is in MSE. This is you're gonna find it under Doe forgot to tag, so I think I forgot to tag this here. But Perchance to Dream. So this is an aftermath card, and I'm just excited that someone is able to figure out a card name, another card name with 2 in there. So Perchance is the side that you would cast from your hand. Dream is the side you cast from the graveyard. So Perchance is X red. It's a sorcery. You flip X coins. Draw a card for each coin that comes up heads. Discard a card for each coin that comes up tails. And then Dream, you would mill X cards and return X instant or sorceries from your graveyard to the hand. And I just like the idea here of drawing cards and discarding cards, because sometimes it doesn't matter too much. If you're drawing a lot, you almost don't care if you're discarding a lot. Obviously, if you're discarding more than you're drawing, that might be a problem. Part of me kind of wants the disc, which is more the rummaging effect, and that would probably be the safer bet, but I could totally see this getting busted at high X mana costs, where if you only have like 2 cards in your hand, you might come ahead, I guess. So perhaps being the draw first is a little bit more risky, which feels a little bit more in Red's pie. And I think the dream works really well. So if you discard a lot of those instants and sorceries, hey, it's okay, you can get it back.
Yeah, I feel less bad for discarding, even though discarding can be an advantage, depending on your deck. It's still nice to not have to be required to have the hoop. You can eventually meet your dreams, achieve them.
Of course, the chance in the name, Perchance, riffing with in the whole flipping the coins. I always liked the randomness in a lot of the Magic cards with flipping coins. I always dreamed up. I always wanted to have a deck that was just all about flipping coins. But I suppose you might end up flipping a lot of coins here if you have a lot of mana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a big fan of this card. I love how the backside synergizes with, well, you have to discard your hand, but it's cool, you can get it all back. I do wish the Aftermath didn't force you to mill, because I think that can lead to some situations where it's like, man, I want to cast this for a big X, but then I lose my entire library, and it's just like, darn. So letting you just kind of live the dream by already having a bunch of instants and sorceries in grave and just recurring them all for a full hand, I think that's maybe that's a balancing valve, but like I think it's probably not. No, okay, actually, it might be a bit messed up at the current cost. But yeah, I'm not sure, even if it is a balancing valve, I'm not sure I like that as a balancing valve. Because you could totally just mill this over, and then casting it for x equals 2 is still really good. And then you don't lose that much equity. But then casting it for high x's makes it a little more more worrisome, the mill. So,
I like your suggestion. Mill up to X cards. That sounds nice. You might have 2 cards left in your library, and you're like, all my answers are here, and I want like 5 cards in my hand, but I can't. You're stuck. But the other, if you take away the milling it completely, it also is the other way around. Now you're stuck with without the benefit. So it's both a benefit and drawback at the same time, depending. So mill up to X sounds nice.
hmm okay. So my next card is going to be Fever Dream by Astard with a B from the MSC file. It's 1 red. Let me just scroll to it real quick. And yeah, it just, you exile your hand and the top card of your library, and you can just play them for as long as they remain exiled. It's essentially a really fancy way of saying draw a card, but it also synergizes with stuff that triggers when you cast spells from exile. It allows you to just completely swerve hand attack. It has a lot of interesting niche use cases, which makes me like it a lot. It's yeah, it's just it's a type of effect where I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen this before. I guess there's stuff which like makes you set aside your hand and then you can swap it with cards that you get, but nothing that just makes it like your hand now exists in exile. Have fun.
Yeah, there's one red card I'm trying to remember the name of here as I'm searching Scryfall feverishly. Uh, but that does exile your hand in mono red, but it's only temporary. It's not a. This
Mm-hmm.
one is a twist where it's like a permanent, but you get a bonus card on top of it, and then you can like access the board. But I love that little trick you can do. Oh yeah, here, Ignorant Bliss is the name for those playing at home or following along. Uh, both of these cards, this design and Ignorant Bliss makes me dream of, oh yeah, I'm gonna cast it in Wheel of Fortune, and I'm gonna feel really
Right.
clever.
Yep. This works so well with those wheel effects. Oxiv, Agonis. It just I'm going to lose these cards anyway. So what if I could just have a second hand? There was a
Oh man.
really old card. It was a red card back in the mid '90s. It was Elkin Lair, maybe. It was this kind of thing, but basically, you have a second hand, not nearly as strong as this would be.
But yeah, okay. What's your next card, Bradley?
Oh. This next one is Careless Dream. We didn't cover this already, right? Let's see. MSC file. Oh no, we have. Sorry. Daydream is the next on the list. MSC file, Daydream. This is the one that is near the top of the file, but it's the one that says choose 3 cards. It's by BoofTroupe. If I said that right.
Yep, I
Sounds
got
like
it.
BoofTroupe. Okay,
BoofTroupe.
so the 3. I know there was an earlier iteration of 2, I believe, with this previous submission, but this is like a second iteration. The 3 reminds me of 3 wishes, which is exactly like what this space is. It's a wish card, and that's a nice way of tying it towards that class of cards, but also like daydreaming. Being a wishful thinking is also is cool, but also it's like it doesn't guarantee that what you are dreaming up is going to come true. There are many possibilities you can think of, and you may end up with the thing that you actually dreamt up that you wanted, but not necessarily all the time. It could be slightly off, just like in real life.
Yeah, I think that this is just another design where I'm like, wait, you're telling me that they haven't printed this before? It's just a solid combination of gifts and given style effects with a wishboard style card. And yeah, um,
Part of me wishes this would just be 3 cards with different names. Oh no, they are with different names. Awesome, good. It
For your
would kind of defeat the
daydreaming
purpose
wish came true.
if you just had 3 of the same card and be like, well, I know what I'm getting. But no, I think the daydream, the ability, the name works really well. Maybe I guess an argument could be made. This isn't, and maybe they weren't intending this to be a common, but I do like the flavor here of the sideboard. A lot of these cards we've seen so far, the library is sort of where the dreams come from. So I kind of like that this is a take on this is where the sideboard is the source of your dreams.
oh yeah, there's also another card called that was I think literally just called Dream from the MTG.design thing. Let me find it real quick, just as a reference. But it had like you create a token copy of a permanent from outside the game, and it becomes an illusion. So also that idea of like dreams coming from your sideboard or outside the game. Um, doo, 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 doo. Oh no, is that the one? No. Okay, I'll try to quickly find it while we're doing this. But yeah, just the thing. I think that was a flavorful resonance that came from that a few people hit on. Yeah.
Well, I can share the next card here. So this would be in the MSC file. So this is Zivla Lucid Dreamer, which is designed by LuckyLooter, and it is a transform card. It transforms into Zivla, Master of Dreamworld. The front side, 1 blue-red, legendary creature, human peasant. At your end step, if you didn't cast a spell, draw a card, and it has Daybound, and it's a 0/3. So not really doing a whole lot, right? If you don't do anything, you get to draw a card. Although if you don't do anything, then it becomes nighttime, and at night, Zivla becomes a 3/3. And whenever you cast your first spell during each opponent's turn, Zivla, Master of Dreamworld, deals 3 damage to any target. So I kind of like the flavor is just really great, and it shows a picture of Zivla, and she's like daydreaming, right? Just kind of, she's got her head against a wooden tree, and she's just checked out. She's not bothering anybody. She's just sleeping, and I think this is what people would see Zivla and be like, okay, she's harmless. We're just not going to worry about her. But then turns out nighttime, maybe she awakes from her sleep, whatever the situation is. But you see this very animated, very colorful character coming to life and rewarding you for all of the instants and spells that you might cast. So I think that's a lot of fun.
Ah, casting spells on opponent's turn archetype, you say?
Mm-hmm.
Now we have, I think, 3 cards we've shown today that reward you for doing that. It just slips that into the pocket for Moxtober Cube. But yeah, and I think that it shows that reason like mechanics that are like have a strong flavorful resonance just end up like I think showing up again and again in designs. And I think Daybound and Nightbound is one that a lot of people, both for today's prompt and tomorrow, have really honed in on.
Usually, like, you can tell a lot of story with just like the text itself, and the art is helps you along to get to the finish line of understanding it. But yeah, like as you pointed out, Ancestral, with the vivid colors and such on the backside, this enhances and tells me something like a lot more to this character when I look at the contrast between the two arts. And I'm sure a lot of people can identify with this type of thing where they, especially maybe people that have a lot of online communities or play a lot of online gaming, that maybe
Yeah.
they can really find themselves in this scenario that's familiar to them.
Yeah,
Totally.
I
We
didn't even consider that.
we might have avatars that are very different from our personas that are very different from how we act in our daily lives, and that can be really kind of an exhilarating release. That can be a lot of fun. So I think this really speaks to that. It's a really good point, Bradley.
Yeah, and I love that you brought that up, as you guys can't actually see this, but the graphic right now is on one side there's Bradley and Ancestral as photos of themselves. On the other side, there's my pixely little self just hanging out. So in real time.
Caillou forever stuck in the nightbound, and we are in the daybound.
That would be really funny actually if like I could ask Lyman and see if we can get like little pixel portraits of you guys for tomorrow so we swap it around. That'd be fun.
Sure.
We'll see.
Oh, and get a picture of you, like an IRL
Yeah,
picture
yeah,
of you?
yeah. Because it's not that it's not that I don't want to show my face, because I've shown my face on my channel a bunch of times. It just kind of didn't come up for this. So yeah,
Oh yeah, this is your Zivla self
Zivla mode.
that
Yeah.
that you present. Yeah.
You'll have to have, either it's going to have to be really wild colors in your real life, or it's going to be the complete opposite, very drab, very monocolored.
Yeah. Okay. So my next card is also going to be from the MSC file. It's this one actually has a name. It's Ormondal's Aspirant, designed by Cajun. And I love Innistrad again. Is where the Daybound Nightbound came from. We got the Skursdog stuff from yesterday, and we're keeping it going with the Innistrad flavor of the Ormondal. So, whenever Ormondal's Aspirant dreams, target opponent discards a card. So, creature dreams when it becomes tapped outside of attacking or leaves the battlefield outside of dying, which I think is super cool because it's the idea of something happening outside the usual, and it makes this implication of like the dreaming that it's talking about isn't quite natural or normal, which is enhanced by the flavor text. Following your dreams in Innistrad often leads to sinister things, and yeah, this mechanic is just like big eyes emoji for me, because I feel like there are lots of ways of potentially enabling it, that range from the simple to the absolutely ludicrous, that I think just building a limited environment where dream is one of the mechanics is just something I really want to see now. So
I think it's pretty clever what Cajun has done here with the flavor text. When I look at the exile part, I'm like, okay, yeah, you somehow went into the exile has been in like, hey, it's the dream zone, but how did you get there? Oh, okay. The flavor text says you actually like went and pursued there. So while tapping makes me think you just dropped and fell asleep, the exiling maybe you actively went to pursue your dreams.
I think this is really clever. I like the batching here with becomes tapped outside of attacking. Okay, leaves battlefield outside of dying. And I kind of had to think about that. I'm like, okay, what would that be? That would be, I guess that would be like exile, flicker, bounce. And I think that's kind of neat because we have a fair number of that. And we have a fair number of, obviously, we have a fair number of creatures that can tap for various reasons. So you're incentivized to do things with the aspirant that isn't necessarily attacking, which the 2/3 is kind of nice. So Ormondal's aspirant ends up being a fairly decent blocker. So I think this is kind of neat, and I would be really interested to see how this would look like with other dreams cards. And I'm actually really excited to see a card that has dream as a keyword, because I don't think we've actually had a card yet with dream as an actual keyword here.
oh yeah, especially since I feel like there are definitely a few people out there doing like mechanic a day, so definitely surprising that we haven't come across one yet. But yeah, okay. What's your next card, Bradley?
Well, let's go over to mtg.design. Um, Daydream Elemental is the name of the card. Another day-night card that we've discussed so far here. But in this case, having an elemental, how do you like that? That all these elementals are always fun to me to go and design around because like, what's the essence of the thing, and what does it mean to daydream? In this case, like when you're daydreaming, your head is in the clouds, right? And that's why it grants flying. But if it's nighttime, you can't be daydreaming at night because you're night dreaming, you're regular dreaming. And that's why you're falling over and asleep on the ground. So I thought that like that's a really tight, like you got a two-sided coin here for how to evoke a daydream as an elemental. Oh, I just noticed the flavor text just made the same joke. Head is always in the cloud.
Oh, I thought you were literally pulling for the flavor text.
No,
Oh my
I
God.
just
Okay, that's hilarious as if it's
all right.
convergent. Yeah, yeah.
Kalkin, you and I, we're both there. Got our same heads in the
Drift
clouds, so
compatible.
we'll dance together. Yeah. In fact, maybe there's two figures in the art. That's us. We're thinking of it of flavor texts.
I think that's was it Whispers of the Muse, something like that. Older
Yeah.
card, but the I like it. I think of like it's a bird, right? I think of a bird that's flying and it's doing its own thing, and then at night maybe the bird is nesting, right? It's they can't really do a whole lot when there's not a lot of light, and wants to make sure that they don't get attacked. So I think it's a pretty simple design. I think actually it's a kind of a neat common, and it works for blue.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, it is a bird. Oh my goodness. You could totally do the Welkin turn like thing. Well, Welkin turns are 2/1s flyer, right? So yeah, just do one in a blue, make it a 2/2 flyer, this unique drawback, or 2/1 or whatever you want to balance. That's awesome.
Okay, Ancestral, what's your next card?
So is it inappropriate for me to bring up my own card? Is that a
Nah,
faux pas?
nah. We used to have
uh,
specific sections at the end where we would talk about our own cards. It's just that like I'm really not designing these days. So,
sure. Well, I did actually draw design one. So and I'd love to get your feedback on it. And I had some even I was sort of debating this. So this is Lost in a Dream. This is in both files. It's a one blue for a sorcery. Draw 3 cards. You can't cast spells until the beginning of your next turn. Exile Lost in a Dream. And the idea here, and I'm kind of intrigued by the idea of an ancestral recall because heck, my name is Ancestral. At least that's my handle. So I kind of have to take a stab at it. I obviously ancestral recall is broken. We don't need to talk about that, but there have been plenty of attempts to get draw 3 cards in a not broken manner. And when I was thinking of dream, I was thinking, well, when you're dreaming, you're kind of incapacitated for a while. So the whole idea here is that, okay, well, maybe you can draw 3 cards, but you have to wait in order to stop until you're done dreaming, right?
Yeah. Yeah. This is like the other kind of some of the other cards that like force you to draw a card at your next turn. In this case, you're actively thinking about the cards in your hand, but you're still in the process of sleeping. Um, this is spicy. This is like turn 3 when I would normally just cast a divination or better than divination. Uh, I would love to just because I'm already tapped out, but like blue is the color that wants most to have 2 islands untapped. after they cast some spell, if it's like turn 6, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna cast my draw spell thing. I got 2 left, but no, this one says, you know, you're gonna have to now. You have the drawback of the late game. It's not as good.
Mm.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like I usually don't like these types of clauses, but I almost wonder if it's like one of those things where it's like you can't cast this on turns 3 or 4 of the game or something. Because I feel like when you play this on curve, it can definitely be a beating. Um, and I think that where the dynamic is interesting is late in the game, where like you can play it as a draw 3, and then you can maybe have abilities that you want to activate or other stuff like that, where there's like deck building stuff that goes into mitigating um, the downside. But yeah, I don't know, because I think that the play patterns late in the game are super compelling, but I'm still a little wary of like at least in like maybe like standard esque formats, drawing 3 on turn 3 or like turn
Yeah,
4.
obviously you have to be really careful with the draw three spells. And I guess the idea I had was blue usually does like playing spells on your opponent's turn. You do have instant spells. So probably the time to play this is second main. So the idea being if you had more mana, you would probably play those spells first. I'm not certain that I needed the exile clause in there. Obviously that kind of nerfs it a little bit, but I think most of the time you're just happy to draw 3 cards for 3 mana.
Yep. Yeah. The did the downside usually I would like most when the draw 3 on turn 3 might be discarding a land for some of these other but like getting to keep that land. Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Okay, and we've just hit our hour timer, so we're gonna do one last lightning round, and then we're gonna wrap up for the day. So my last card is going to be Oracle's Awakening from the MSC file, designed by Angel of Grace. Um, Here we go. Um, it's an enchantment with flash, and when it enters the battlefield, it deals damage to any target equal to the mana value of target spell. And whenever an opponent casts a spell, if it isn't their turn, exile the top card of your library. You may cast that card until end of turn. Now this is like a weirdly compelling, like hate piece, in the sense of like usually red doesn't get like obviously red doesn't get like counter magic, but then this functionally it can acts as like weird stack interaction where it's like cool, you're gonna play a 4 drop, well yeah, well I'm gonna bonk you for 4, and then the second or like and you can also play it in response to an opponent playing a counterspell to just kind of dome them for a little bit or take out a planeswalker or something when they're not expecting instant speed quote unquote interaction. And yeah, the second ability is all about hosing control decks, or just essentially it's pretty much just control decks where it's like uh, anytime they try to cast spells in your turn, if you get to resolve this, you can just get increasing card advantage and drown them. I kind of feel like the two halves are they're not in contention with each other, but I feel like they try to combat different things. But I love this exploration of red counterspell, quote unquote, and just kind of like what a red hate enchantment would look like. Also, just I think the flavor that just comes from this having flash and just the name alone, it's compelling enough, but leaves a lot of room for interpretation.
I'm fascinated by when like I love Red's part of the pie where there's volatility involved. Uh, eh, I'm like having this in my hand, and I'm like, okay, is this the time to cast it? Like, I only have so many like backup lightning bolts if I don't spend my mana. Uh, if they cast this 4 mana spell, maybe this is when I want to deal the most damage. 4 for 4, not bad. But what if they cast their Colossal Dreadmaw, man? Then I could do 6 damage.
Oh, and I also forgot to mention it has flash, so it synergizes with the casting spells during opponent's turn archetype. while
This
also
is
simultaneously hosing that same archetype somehow.
These recap vids are also a chronicle of the journey of the Moxtober cube.
Me putting together archetypes in real time.
Yeah.
I think this is a good way for red to do its counter magic, if you will. So back, way back in the early sets, it wasn't that uncommon for wizards to design cards that were sort of more color hosers, or even sort of doing what its enemy was doing. And red oftentimes had these like counter spells that were kind of blue hate. And I think this is really a fun example of being able to counter a spell and do a very red thing in response to really whatever your opponent has. So I think it's a very good example of a red's version of a counter spell, if you will.
I love that little throwback to blue hate on red spells with this. Like we've talked before about with your design ancestral, is that blue is the color that is most likely to play spells when it's not their turn. So this is like a little wink towards that. It's like, who's getting most screwed by this.
Okay, Bradley, what's going to be your last design for the day?
Okay. Did you just ask that again? All right, that's fine. It's Deja Vu in MTG.designland. So this one, there's some like logistical play patterns, if you will, I guess, that I love about this. So first thing you do is you see Deja Vu in your hand and you handle it, you foretell it. That's the first time you see it. And then you have to interact with it again. And that is like a deja vu of your physical manipulation of the card, or in digital, your clicks or whatever you want to do. But then also, of course, the gameplay effect is, oh, you cast a spell and you copy it. That's the deja vu part, is in addition to that. So I think having that little foretell setup is like, that makes me feel like that's a smiling moment for me. And of course, like when you're concerning deja vu and dreaming, like that's where you're like wondering whether you dreamt it or you've seen it before.
I like the double blue. So it's 3 blue blue. The foretell is blue blue. It's got a lot of, repeat going on there. I like that they also did a really nice job getting the accent and the grave, and spent just a little bit of time there getting that right. I'm not sure if there would be a reason to cast it when it's not foretold. And maybe there's a reason for that, or maybe it's just, if it's deja vu, you kind of have to do this in 2 steps.
Right. Yeah. Like playing my like Lutri deck in ETH, I often cast spells from my graveyard. So that's one way to
Oh,
it's like, hey, this,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah,
give a
sure.
flashback or whatever. So I guess that gives you, if it had nothing, I guess it would not enable you to do that. So maybe that's as a little avenue out for you. Yeah, shout out to Shield Maiden or Kristen on Twitter.
Okay, and for the last card of the day, Ancestral, finish us off.
Okay, so I have a card here on MTG.design. I just had it here. Dismissive Dreamer. So it's 1 blue blue for creature, human, wizard. It has flash, another flash card. Each creature your opponents control is an illusion in addition to its other types, and it has the illusion ability that we sort of know, which is when it becomes the target of a spell or ability, sacrifice it. It's a 1/3 wizard. This is made by Cube of Will. And I like it. I'm not certain that it's necessarily balanced, but I like the idea of that someone took illusions and dreams because they just go hand in hand. At least in my head, they seem that there's this connection here. Illusions are temporary, so I like that it's sort of like turning real world things into dreams, and I just think that's really cool.
Yeah, I remember seeing a similar design, maybe on the subreddit, where it was like, uh, where the flavor was kind of just like someone who's like a skepticist or like grounded, and is just like, yeah, I don't believe in those vampires and demons and all that. There has to be a rational explanation, and I like that. I like seeing convergent mechanics, but with different flavors, and this just kind of, yeah, it just feels like a really solid card because um, unless you have like really specific things, at least off the top of my head, unless you have really specific things in your environment, you're usually not going to be using this to like machine gun down an opponent's board. Instead, it turns like combat tricks and other stuff into removal in a kind of like dynamic way. So yeah, I'm a fan.
I'm not sure if y'all have seen the card Dismiss into Dream before, but this is a nice nod towards that. Dismissive Dreamer is doing Dismiss into Dream, but
Did
on a
not
body.
realize. Oh, very
Yeah,
cool. Yeah,
yeah,
you're right.
and I guess you could say like a 1/3 body is fragile versus the Dismiss into Dream, so it can be cheaper.
Hmm.
Uh, but I also like that it may even do what Dismiss into Dream does a bit better in that uh, I like the flavor that dreams can be interrupted and that someone is the product of the dreams. Whereas the enchantment, the original card, uh, that's just a permanent dream, and it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, they are the dreams themselves, but it's I guess it's a living dream that one can never wake up from.
Okay, and with that, we're going to wrap up today's show. Once again, thanks to Ancestral and Bradley for joining us. Thanks to Cajun for setting up LackyBot to make all of this work. And thanks to Ancestral again for setting up the mtg.design page and being a big portion of how people are designing cards for Moxtober. Once again, we're going to have links to both the mtg.design and LackyBot galleries in the description, as well as instructions on how you can submit your own cards, um, and a list of the cards we featured today, plus their designers. Um, but yeah, until next time, this is going to be Caillou signing off.